Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Golurk. Wow, we are really in a trend right now that we have Pokemon with pretty low speed and good enough defenses and then a pretty high offensive stat. So Golurk is going to work out in the way that we take damage and then we just try to dish more damage back. And with the 89 on the hit points and 80s on defenses, we are going to be tankier than your average Pokemon. So we will be able to survive 2 hits, 3 hits, and really turn around a good amount of damage and potentially some really high KOs. On that, 124 on the attack is pretty solid, and the rest are just kind of, your regular stats that you expect from Pokemon like this. No special attack, very low on the speed. We're not going to really outspeed too much of anything, and that's just going to be how the game is. Look at its typing. It's a ground ghost type. Mother furret. That's not good when we're trying to be tanky. We have a ground ghost type, so we have all the ground weaknesses and we have all the ghost weaknesses, and none of them cover for each other. And now we have to worry about getting hit by ice types, water, grass, dark, and other ghosts. So if we see that super effective hit, it's really going to make it difficult to us to have to deal with. But we do get a lot of immunities. I mean, the ground ghost gives us a normal, fighting, and electric immunity, so 3 is really nice. And then resistance, poison, rock, and bug. Not the best resistances, honestly, that we really can't do much with those. Like, we might be able to save damage off our fairy type or our Talonflame, but it's not going to be that insane, and we don't want this Pokemon taking too much damage anyways. It's not a tank, it's not a sustaining kind of Pokemon. As we hop into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to see it just wants to throw out the damage. So Golurk is really cool too. Like, it has awesome abilities, has a really good design compared to its battle. Like, the way that it wants to fight matches its design, and it does a lot of really good things, but the typing and the way the stats play out do hold it back. So the cool stats are Iron Fist and No Guard. So No Guard is going to make it to where our move will always hit as long as it's type appropriate. We can't throw a Dynamic Punch onto a Ghost type Pokemon. That's not how it works, but it means accuracy does not matter. And then we also do have Iron Fist. So if we want to play all punchy moves, we can do really well with that. And being a ground typing, we get Stab Earthquake. So Stab Earthquake's gonna be a ton of damage. Drain Punch, that gets boosted. Ice Punch, that gets boosted. Stab and Iron Fist. Now here's where it gets weird, because like, for a physical ghost type Pokemon, there aren't a lot of really amazing moves for Golurk, but the Shadow Punch is going to have its own benefits and drawbacks. Drawback, 60 base power. Benefit, does not check accuracy. So if you're running the Iron Fist, you still have like a no guard thing on your team that works out for you. You also get the Phantom Force. Now Phantom Force is going to do a lot of damage. 90 base power, it's going to be like a ghost type earthquake kind of thing for you, and it also disappears and breaks through protection. So if you have a Pokemon that's like protect stalling with the leftovers, you can actually hit them with the Phantom Force. It'll also be a turn where you don't take damage, so that'll make it to where your opponent can sit up against you, or they just miss an attack and you get a lot of damage onto them. Unfortunately not affected by Iron Fist, but still a very solid move nonetheless. Looking at the stats, hit points and attack are what we're going to be investing into, because there's really no other point of investing into much of anything else. So 124 attack, choice banded stab moves, we're looking for a lot of damage, but the problem is we're not going to find ridiculous amounts of KOs with a neutral earthquake or something, so that's why we do have all of this other stuff for us, that Drain Punch. Now with Drain Punch, we're going to be able to come in and we're going to find a lot of neutral 2-hit KOs, as well as just a good amount of super effective hits against just a lot of normal typing Pokemon, and the things that are weak against fighting. Ice Punch, we're going to be able to deal with Dragon type Pokemon pretty well, and it's also going to be our flying, that we can use Ice Punch, take out some flying Pokemon, as well as having that like earthquake damage next to us. So it does combo out pretty well, and then Phantom Force for whatever you needed to use on, Psychic type Pokemon, other Ghost type Pokemon. Your coverage is going to be pretty solid, but again, the damage, it's more 2-hit KO range, and that's fine because you're a tank, but at the same time, if you're a 3-hit KO Pokemon, you're only going to be able to score 1 KO unless you have super effective hits. But in the end, you're still a 3-hit KO Pokemon, and you might find some success, or you might find parts where you just kind of fall apart. So a little bit of damage, a little bit of trading with Golurk, and it's going to be alright, unless you have the Drain Punch. Drain Punch, you're going to be able to heal back a lot of health, but at the same time, now you're locked into a fighting type move on a ghost ground type Pokemon. So I mean, you could just have a bulky Drain Punch Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a Drain Punch sustain tank, just be Conkeldurr and everything's going to be fine. Now when we're comparing it to Machamp, it does get the No Guard ability, and these stats are terrifyingly similar. 89 compared to 90, 80, 85, and then 55 on speed. So they have the same amount of speed. Machamp has a little bit more attack and slightly more survivability. But with that No Guard, both Pokemon do get access to the Dynamic Punch. Now Dynamic Punch on this, it can work. Like, it's going to be crazy amounts of damage, and it does have that confusion going for it. So if they hit themselves, you might be able to buy yourself that extra turn, but then you're stuck in Dynamic Punch, and it's just kind of its own thing from there. But if you're playing up the Dynamic Punch, you're going to want to play a Golurk that's going for setup, I feel. Now, Golurk can also go for the Rock Polish, And that's where things get really interesting because, alright, you come in, you use Rock Polish, now you can outspeed 135 base speed Pokemon with just a little bit of investment. So right here at level 50, we're going to be able to outspeed it with 220 speed EVs. We can put the rest in the hit points. We can get a little tankier. See, this is the problem, that if we went 252, it really wouldn't do anything for us, but by doing this, we're actually going to buy ourselves a couple of more hit points, and that can work out pretty well, and then the rest into attack. And then we just kind of hope for the best. Now what we want to do is we want to Rock Polish, take that hit. Now we're probably going to be more of a 2-hit KO Pokemon, so we need that Dynamic Punch to connect. We need that Dynamic Punch to actually like get them to confuse themselves. And if they hit themselves in confusion, then we can do another move, and that's going to convert KOs. Once we have our Rock Polish set up, we're pretty much just going to be playing for that confusion or the coverage. We get Ice Punch, we get Earthquake, and with this we can throw on the Life Orb. This is a really interesting case for Life Orb because you're anticipating taking that damage on the first turn, but if you don't take any more damage, you should be fine. Like, unless it's a super overwhelmingly powerful neutral hit, then Life Orb might be bad because you might knock yourself out with it. But once you have that field control on and you're throwing out a lot of damage, you can combo a lot of 2-hit KOs, or you can just maybe find 1-hit KOs with a very good Earthquake or an Ice Punch opportunity. So you can make this one work, but that's just the No Guard Dynamic Punch, and there's also the Scarf option. That Machamp, it can just go Scarf Dynamic Punch, and with that, you know, you're going to want to go with the Jelly nature, but then you're kind of playing a bit of pseudo support with a good amount of damage, and it's going to be better on Machamp anyways. You're Scarfing Dynamic Punch, Machamp is getting stabbed, and it's going to have a lot more bonus damage on top of it. So that's kind of thing. But if you want to use Golurk that bad, you still do have those ground options. You can still carry through with whatever Golurk wants to do. But with Golurk, it just doesn't make as much sense unless you want it for just the coverage. But I mean, even then, with Champ, you're going to see it with an Earthquake. You can see it with an Ice Punch. It can pretty much carry the same things except for like Shadow Punch and Phantom Force. Does it get Shadow Punch? No, it doesn't. So at least it's not that similar, but this is why Golurk has some problems. And in double battles, I really like the idea of a Scarf Dynamic Punch though. I think it's really cool that you can go and like outspeed your opponent, get a good amount of damage, and have them confuse themselves while putting on that damage pressure and being remotely speedy. But that's kind of it with Golurk. And then we're going to look at Stealth Rocks. Pokemon can Stealth Rock set up. They're like a leftovers. It's tricky because another thing this Pokemon does is it has Power Up Punch. So, I mean, you can become a Power Up Punch into like Drain Punch, Hyper Tank, but it wants to, like, a fighting type Pokemon does this better. So I mean, you can set up Stealth Rocks and you can have like damage things, but this isn't really going to work that well either. You can go full tank with leftovers and then just kind of like stall out your opponent a bit. But mostly, Golurk is just going to have like some really niche situations and be pretty much good at that. However, there are really good benefits. That it does have the No Guard ability, so if your opponent is spamming Minimize or Evasion, you can use that and break them down. Same with the Shadow Punch on this set, that if they have like a Chandelure that's trying to set up Minimize, you just go and blow them up with some Shadow Punches and you're going to be good to go. So that's Golurk. You need the super effective hits. It's one of those like super coverage Pokemon, one of those tanks that can like absorb things. We've seen a lot of Pokemon like this, and Golurk, it has too many similarities of wanting to be a fighting type Pokemon, and it doesn't offer enough like damage and coverage options with the Ghost Ground, so it is pretty difficult to use. Trick Room, you can use that. Trick Room Life Orb going to be pretty powerful because it lets you change up your moves, but then that singles Trick Room or doubles Trick Room kind of setup. So do you want to give your Golurk that much setup? It can still work. I've seen Golurk do some really cool things, but it's not going to be that exceptional, and as a Ghost type Pokemon, it can't use Curse to boost its attack and defenses because it just puts a curse on you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So I use Golurk, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.